All right, consistency. I know a lot of people have, problems with consistency. They struggle with consistency. If that sounds like you, this video is just for you. We're going to cover all of the different points that you might be missing out on and why reasons why you're not consistent, tips and tricks on how to stay consistent. If that interests you, stick around for this video. We're going to cover all of them. Also, my name is Beeshmar. I make videos that'll help you in the gym. If that interests you, hit that subscribe button. All right, first things first, you need to be highly motivated. So I just made a video on this, so I won't spend too much time on it, but basically you need to be intrinsically motivated. The motivation needs to come from within. It has to be related to your goals, your ideals, your values, your beliefs, rather than, the results or the rewards. It has to conform to your identity and it has to conform to your destiny. So I just made a video on it. I'll link it. So go check that out. This is definitely the most important thing in terms of being consistent. So I highly recommend you check that out. Don't make excuses. So, I need to get my sleep. Bro, you haven't even done any work yet. You haven't gone to the gym, so why do you need to get your sleep? I've seen so many people, miss the gym because they're like, oh, I need to get my sleep. You don't need to get your sleep every single night. You're not going to die if you get 4 hours of sleep one night. It's better to do the work and then sleep after. You can just sleep after you've done the work. Think about all the other things you made time for other than the gym. You didn't say, oh, I need to sleep when you were like scrolling through your phone for like 3 hours, or when you were on Netflix or whatever else. You didn't say you needed to sleep then. So how come now the gym needs to be sacrificed for your sleep or for anything else, like your other goals? Why are you sacrificing your actual things that matter rather than the things that don't matter? Don't allow your brain to trick you here. Your brain will always come up with like little excuses, little reasons why this reason is a valid reason. It's not a valid reason. It's your brain tricking you. I've been in this process before, and I've been held back the hardest because of these little brain tricks. But when I came out the other side of it, I realized you just got to ignore that little part of your brain that's telling you that you need to skip the gym. You have to push past that. Inconveniences are not valid excuses. So everyone has these inconveniences. You have to pick your sister up from school. You have to do whatever chores. You have to run some errands for your parents, pick them up from the airport. You have to, pull up to your friends because he's visiting from anything random. Everyone has all these inconveniences, but they're not valid excuses to skip the gym. You have to find a way to work around the inconveniences. Happen all the time and they're part of life. So if you want to make the gym a part of your life, you need to find a way to work your way around these inconveniences. Make excuses to go to the gym. Don't make excuses to skip the gym. Make excuses to go to the gym. Successful people are motivated to make things happen. So if you want to be successful in the gym, you got to be motivated to go to the gym. Start backed off. So focus on the progress and not the destination. Think about where you were, yesterday or last week, and focus on how much you're progressing. Every time you go to the gym, every week you go to the gym, focus on your progress. Focus on, how you were last month compared to how you are now. Don't focus on, the destination. That's really far in the future, right? For most of us, it's very far in the future. It's not something. It wouldn't be worth it if it was something that we would be able to get in like 2 weeks. Think about it. If your goals were achievable in 2 weeks, it wouldn't be special. If everyone would be able to do it. So focus on the progress. Use a plan that's sustainable. So, don't try to do too much. Again, don't try to do too much because, you have so much work to do to get to your final destination. Don't try to do too much weight or go to the gym too many days in a week. Don't go 6 days in a week, 7 days in a week. People do that and then they fall off, they burn out. Use something that's sustainable, that you can maintain, that, fits your schedule, it fits your goals, and use that plan to stay consistent and build a base. And once you start racking up these small wins, then you can start to see how it'll build into your final destination. So drop your ego. Don't start with really high weights. Don't start with trying to do too many exercises, doing too many days in the gym. Start with something that you can make and ramp your way up from that. Where you are right now literally does not matter. So you don't need to never focus on where you are right now. Just focus on how you have improved within the last month. That's the best thing you can do. How far have you come from last month to this month? How much more work have you done? How much more weight have you lifted? How much better has your physique become? How much have you learned? These kind of things. How much have you recovered? How much have you healed? All of these things are important. This is what matters more than where you are compared to something else. As long as you're moving in the right direction, that's what matters the most. All right, let's talk about setbacks. Setbacks are inevitable. They happen to everyone. It's not just you who has a setback. Literally everyone will have a setback. If you go to the gym for 2 years, you're going to have setbacks. They're inevitable. Injuries, illnesses, other external factors, whatever it is, family matters. Everyone's going to have setbacks. Everyone's going to have reasons they can't go to the gym, the reasons, their health declined, whatever else. So It's not only you, everyone experiences them. A setback is not a valid excuse to fail in the gym. Like I said, everyone experiences setbacks. It's not only you. Everyone, will get sick. Everyone might get hurt. Everyone's going to face other external factors. It's inevitable. It's not a valid excuse to fall off and then say, oh, this is why I couldn't gym anymore. It's not a valid excuse to fail. How you bounce back defines how well you do in the gym. So, if you get back right back on the ball as soon as you're able to and get back in the gym and do your best, that's what's going to make you succeed. So the best way to do it is start back off from where you left off. So, let's say you're benching, 155 pounds. When you go back, maybe you have to bench 145 pounds or something like that. You start a little bit backed off because obviously, depending on what happened, your injury, your illness, you probably have lost some of the strength or the muscle mass that you've had before. So you have to start backed off. But remember, comebacks are always easy. I should have put the word very easy. Comebacks are always very easy physically. So a comeback in the gym, like when you've fallen off and you come back, it's so much easier to get to that point where you were than it was when you first initially pushed to that point. A comeback is always very, very easy physically. It's just the mental aspect because you've fallen off, because you have to start further backed off, because you've been set back. It's always the mental battle that's the hardest. Most people can't get over that. They just give up. They can't bring themselves to start at a point where they're further backed off. But the comebacks are always very, very easy physically. It's just the mental aspect. You have to get past those first couple of weeks where you're a little behind where you used to be. But after that, you'll be in your top shape again. So comebacks are always easy. That's a very important concept to understand as well. All right, don't get too complacent. So don't spend too much time admiring yourself. I know a lot of people, they've went to the gym, they maxed out their noob gains, and then they'll look at themselves in the mirror too much. They're like, wow, I did so well. It's good that you be proud of yourself for that kind of thing. But what happens when you do that too much is that you no longer have the desire to push forward anymore. You don't have that desire to keep pushing yourself further and further. You have to kind of want to do more work in order to actually achieve higher goals. So, when you talk about body dysmorphia, I think a lot of people say it's bad, but I think it's like, it kind of makes sense to me why a lot of people have body dysmorphia, like the successful bodybuilders, because they don't allow themselves to see themselves as like being very strong or being very large, because that would make it so that they wouldn't be as hungry to push further, if that makes sense. Don't go for low-hanging fruit. So, if you go into the gym for a couple of months, you've realized some noob gains, you might start to get more attention. For guys, for a lot of guys, you might get some more attention from girls. And for girls, they might get a lot of attention, if they start posting on social media. I know girls will get a lot of attention very easily if they post on social media. So, these are very easy things to acquire, but chances are they do not line up with your final goals. You don't really like that girl that is giving you attention right now. She's not the one that you want. You don't want that validation from social media. You want something that actually has meaning. Don't get arrogant. So, this ties in with the first point, but don't look at yourself as you're being super big or being super large and aggressive, because what happens is you lose the desire to continue pushing forward as a person. You lose the desire to continue bettering yourself. You now see yourself as someone who's kind of made it in a way. I definitely know a couple of people, who've maxed out their noob gains and they became kind of like this, and then, they're kind of stuck there, even though they go to the gym, they're kind of stuck in that noob phase, or that, they maxed out the noob phase, but they haven't really pushed beyond that yet, because of arrogance or because of, ego or whatever else. So always think of how you can do better. Always think of how you can improve yourself, how you can achieve your goals. So even if you have success, even if you're doing well, you should always be thinking, how can I do better? How can I improve myself? How can I achieve my goals? This brings me back to the time when I used to play League of Legends as an aside. One of the reasons why I was quite successful in that game is because I was like a very humble person. So like, I would always be like, oh, how could I have done better in this situation? Even if something happened and it wasn't my fault, or even if I did something good, I would always be like, how can I do better? How can I do better? If something happened that wasn't my fault, I would still say, how can I do better? How can I improve? So I became very good at that game, compared to a lot of other people where they're always blaming something else. They're always blaming somebody else. And those people get stuck at a certain rank because they don't really improve, right? They're always blaming something else. They're blaming external factors. So if you always try to better yourself, improve yourself, then you'll actually, you become better. You slowly become better and better. You work towards the goals you want to achieve. So in that same manner, I try to implement this mentality in most other aspects in life as well. All right, and lastly, be proud of yourself. So it kind of goes against everything here, but The reason I say don't get too complacent is because I have seen people fail or fall off in the gym because they have gotten complacent, because they have had ego or, arrogance or whatever. But, at the same time, it's not good to be always negative. Be proud of yourself, of the, the progress that you made, but just continue to get better and better while being proud of yourself, instead of being proud of yourself and then getting complacent. All right, discipline. This one is a little bit harder to teach. I feel like it's something that kind of comes from within. The best way I can kind of relate it to you guys is like, if you ever played youth sports and you had one of those like old school hardened coaches who were like, they just cared about the win. They just cared about doing the work. They made you run until you couldn't run anymore. Then you made you run again. They called you a little bitch if you didn't want to do it anymore. Like, they're always pushing you. They keep making you do the work, right? If you had those kind of coaches, you played youth sports and did stuff like that, that ingrained a lot of discipline in you naturally. Weightlifting is very easy compared to training like that in like soccer or like, hockey or whatever else you played. So these days are more important than the days you are highly motivated. So the days when you don't feel like going to the gym, when you don't feel like doing the hard work, those days are more important. They'll define you more than the days when you're highly motivated. Anyone can do work when they're highly motivated, but the days where you aren't highly motivated, the days when you don't want to, and you still do it, those days will push you past everyone else. So look to your long-term goals. So always think about the reason why you're supposed to do what you're supposed to do, even though you don't feel like it. Think about the reasons why you're supposed to go to the gym, or you're supposed to do this work that you're supposed to do right now. Ignore your feelings. They are the reason why you are the way you are and not the way you want to be. So, if you always just do exactly what you feel and you always take the path of least resistance, when you feel like going to the gym, you go to the gym, then you feel like eating, then you feel like doing this, then that, you just do whatever you feel like doing, it's very hard to see a change in your life. Your feelings are the reason why you are the way you are, not where you want to be. So if you want to make a change, something has to change. If you want to, see some progress, you have to make the change. You have to want to make the change. Enjoy the struggle. So this is one that helps me a lot. I hope that a lot of you can implement this because it will definitely motivate you and push you further and further. So enjoy the struggle. The more tired you are, the more it hurts, the more you struggle, the harder it pushes me. The harder it makes me want to push even harder because, the more you struggle, the further you separate from everyone else. So the harder it is, the more you separate from everyone else. If you're waking up at 4 a.m. to go to the gym while everyone else is sleeping, you're beating everyone else. You're doing work when they're sleeping. So the more you struggle, the further you separate from everyone else. Don't be neurotic. So, when things get hard, you don't actually need to maximize the amount of negative emotions you're feeling. You can experience a negative emotion and then try to move your mind somewhere else. You don't need to like sit in your room, sit on your bed and just, experience a negative emotion. I'm tired. I feel hurt. I feel hungry. My stomach feels weird. If you just leave your house and go to the gym without thinking about that too much, it won't actually be that bad. Trust me, I've been there. You can choose the way you want to feel, believe me. I'm not saying like your feelings are invalid or anything, but the way you react to them matters a lot. All right, lastly, just a quick point, mindset. So results take time. So a lot of people, they want to see the results in like 2 weeks or whatever. Sometimes that works when you're very, very new to the gym. When you have the noob gains, it's called noob gains, when you're very new. So like your body adapts very rapidly. For most of us, we're going to take some time. You need to delay your gratification. You have to see the results several months down the line. You can't see the results, in 2 weeks. You need to stay consistent for a while. That means staying on the same program, sticking with the same routine, not making excuses, not skipping the gym, eating right, pushing hard. Everything that you want to do that aligns with your goals, you have to do all of that. So you have to want to do the work. So instead of thinking of it as, oh, I want to have this status, or I want to have the body or the physique or the figure or the strength, you have to think of it as, instead of, I want to do the work to get to that point, or I want to deserve to get to that point. You want to be consistent. You want to wake up early. You want to slowly progress your training. You want to eat right. You want to recover right. So instead of thinking of it as you want it, think of it as you want to deserve it. You want to deserve it. If you think of it like that, that's going to also help your mindset shift and help you become a little bit more consistent as well. Anyways, guys, that's going to wrap up this video. I want to thank you all for watching. Like the video if you liked it. Comment down below any questions, comments, or concerns. Share this video with someone who you feel like struggles to stay consistent. With that being said, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.